All right, everybody, welcome to this episode of On the Move presented by Move Outdoors. Today, I'm joined by my good buddy Derek Hart again. You might recognize him from episode 7, discussing all about his journey to hunting, his first deer, kind of how he's progressed in hunting from that point. And in that podcast, we mentioned that him and I were going to be doing an elk hunt. Well, today, it's just him and I. We're going to be discussing everything that went on during this elk hunt, do a little bit of a recap for you guys, and it should go along with the video that's on our YouTube channel right now as this podcast airs. And that video is titled Persistence, a Wyoming Elk Hunt. And I highly suggest you guys go check it out. So I won't waste too much time introducing Derek because, like I said, you guys should have listened to him in episode 7. If you haven't, I'm going to pause here for about 3 seconds, give you a chance to go back and listen to that episode. All right, you're all caught up. You know who Derek is. You know how awesome of a guy he is, and that's why him and I went out to Wyoming. So starting off with day 1, we're just going to jump right into it here. Derek, you flew into Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on Friday night. Your flight arrived at like 10 p.m. and I drove down to pick you up at 10 p.m., which was pretty brutal. And we drove through the night basically to get to our hunt area in Wyoming. I'm not going to go through the drive because it's long and it's boring and people don't really care about that. So let's just jump into that first day in Wyoming.
Yeah, so jumping right into the first day, I think, on the way out, we had a lot of discussion about how we wanted to attack this beast. And essentially what we came to is we're just going to take every drivable road up into the Medicine Bow mountain range there, analyze what we can from the road, right? Try to get a lay of the land, figure out any access points, pressure, you name it, just whatever intel we can gather driving around and either glassing too, or just basically taking notes of like what we see, right? And I think the biggest thing we realized, Zach, is, oh shit, it's Labor Day weekend and we are down in one of the most populated corners of Wyoming, that southeast corner, right? Because you have Laramie and Cheyenne. I don't know if we totally ran the numbers, but I think that is the most populated southeast corner of Wyoming.
By far.
Correct. Yeah. So you take that into consideration. Where we were hunting was one of the most accessible places for the most populated places. And I think we saw that for sure, just driving around and just analyzing. I mean, we were going down some of those. Were those the Forest Service roads or were those dedicated to something else?
I think those were Forest Service roads, I think.
Okay, whatever the designation of them was. I mean, driving down them, there's just lots of people sign, every pull off, every little campsite, you name it, somebody's in there. And
if it was big enough to fit a truck, and especially if it was big enough to fit a camper, somebody was there basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And driving along, I mean, as you guys know, you can tell when somebody's a hunter or not. One, kind of by their vehicle, whatever stickers on the back of the trucks, etc. Do you see them just sitting there? Do they have camo on? Blah blah blah. Those little key things, I guess. To like pick up and know like who's who, because we're also battling recreational pressure too. Because this is like a family-oriented type of area where you can. I mean, there was just recreational campers up there too, in certain areas. So we were kind of trying to delineate like which is, who's hunting and who's just kind of camping. And obviously the farther you went back these roads, it turned more into like, yeah, all these guys are hunting back here. So like right off the bat, we're like, yeah, this is way more pressure than I guess we kind of fantasized or theorized before going out, right? I think a lot of people might get in the mindset like, oh, Wyoming, just the big, vast expanse, everybody's either spread out or nobody's there, right?
Well, the other thought too was like, this was Labor Day weekend, so we're thinking, okay, opening day of elk season has already passed. in the hunt area that we were at. And then we're not near the rut yet. We're still a solid week and a half, 2 weeks from the rut. And I figured all the hunting pressure is coming during the rut and during opening day. And wow, if there's more hunting pressure there than there was over Labor Day weekend, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, I guess maybe we'll set a little more of a detailed timeline here. So when Zach picked me up from the airport, it was Friday night, September 1st. And then when we're getting into the hunting unit, it's like Saturday, somewhere between like 12 and 2. I think we might have stopped at Walmart to get supplies and food,
Yep.
water, et cetera, et cetera. So let's just call it for around number 2 p.m. on Saturday the 2nd, I think, if I have it right.
Yeah, I think it'd be the 2nd.
Yeah, because Labor Day was the 4th. So that kind of sets the stage a little better, I think, in my mind. Sorry, I kind of got us off track, but I wanted to lay that out because I think that the thought and the understanding that it was Labor Day weekend, where you have people again in the most populated corner of a state with a 3-day weekend. If people have the opportunity to take that 3-day weekend, say a guy doesn't have many vacation days, but he has that one day off and he wants to take that 3-day hunting and camping trip up in the woods, like he's going to take it. So just another one of those factors to consider, when you're looking at how populated that area was and like the economy of that area. So anyhow, kind of got us slightly sidetracked. Where do you want to go from here? I think.
No, I don't think that's really sidetracked. I mean, I think establishing a good timeline for people's important. And then we kind of got into that hunt unit, like you said, about 2 p.m. We drove around a lot of different roads trying to check out pressure and really get an understanding of how much competition we have in that area. And the farther we went into the unit, the farther we went into the mountains, really, it did seem like the pressure kind of thinned out a little bit, going up towards the peak. But then we ran into, once again, a ton of recreational people right around the line of our hunt unit. So we kind of spent all of Saturday driving around, basically. And due to a little bit of indecisiveness, we kind of just picked a spot on the map that we thought we'd be able to see a long ways and set up actually, we didn't even set up the tents. We slept in the truck Saturday night then. Not too dissimilar from Friday night on the drive out there, with a plan to hike up to a looking knob basically in the morning, somewhere we could glass a long way and figure out if we see any elk or not. And we ended up getting up pretty early Sunday morning so we could make it there, hiked across a horrific scree slope that was just shale and did not look anything like it was on the map. That was probably one of the top 5 like scariest / dumbest hikes I've done in my life. I don't know about you, Derek, but that was going across that scree slope in the darkness was a little sketch. But
lesson 1: have a good headlamp. That helps.
Yeah, have a good headlamp
because you never know what situation you might get into.
We both had some good black diamond headlamps, but man, that was pretty scary going up to that glassing point in the morning. But thankfully we got there probably 5-10 minutes after sunrise, and almost immediately as we sat down, I was able to spot elk. The problem being that they were about 1.5 miles off and about 250 to 300 yards onto private land, which was kind of a bummer.
But what did that do for us? That gave us some intel that we know that there's elk at the bottom ranges of the mountain, possibly on public, but we see them on private. We know that private butts right up to public. So how far are they, interchanging between the line or whatever? I mean, that was our first sighting of elk. after getting there and then looking around, analyzing the pressure, et cetera, now we're finally glassing, and that's our first sign of elk. So that's another key piece of intel that we got, which is okay. There's elk on private, okay, but that private butts up to public. All right,
Exactly.
so that's like first kind of game on, right? Like now we see we've got some located, and then we can kind of go from there. And then
And
also too, while we're glassing there, we're kind of analyzing, what is their preferred, like what is their preference for this morning feeding? Like, okay, they're in this like short grass field, which you know, call it whatever what you will. I have no idea what those grasses are that they're eating out there, but they were in a shorter grass field. They're on the top of a finger, on the top of a knob, and the sun is just coming up. So take that into consideration too, right? Like we're
yep.
still learning these animals because it's our first time ever going elk hunting. What do they eat? Right? Like we do all the YouTube stuff and whatnot and podcasts and try to kind of understand that going in, but what's happening in the current moment? What do we see right now?
Yep.
Morning time, at least, I don't know, what would you call it? 30, 45 minutes of light, and maybe even a little longer, hour, maybe even a little longer than that.
Yep.
I forget, we didn't time it, but they were out in those fields grazing like that, which is a little slightly contradictory to like a pressured whitetail or something, right? They're
Oh,
gonna
for sure.
they're gonna be out of those fields and maybe not hanging around in the morning so much. So it's like, okay, that's another thing. This is a different beast than a whitetail, which is primarily what we have experience with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, the first couple days of the hunt really was just kind of figuring out how to even locate and hunt these things more than anything else. But now we have that experience, so it'll help us on future trips. But that certainly was a shocker, an eye opener, because like Derek said, you watch all these hunts and you kind of think you have an idea, and then you actually get out there and you see the terrain and the habitat and what the elk are actually doing, and your preconceived notions kind of get a little shattered almost, as far as what's actually going on there.
yeah, oh, here, let's throw this out there. Here's a point of pressure that we did not consider whatsoever on, beforehand. Cows.
Yeah.
Got like people
Yeah.
being able to put cows on certain pieces of public land that are grazing areas, etc. Like we had to figure that out on the go as well. As long, you got, so think about your biggest 3 points of pressure now that we've considered: predators, people, and now it's cows.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think that cows like are something that would really
Like
disturb
beef
your hunt,
cattle. We're
but
talking beef cattle, not
yeah,
elk
yeah, beef
cows. Beef
cattle. Yeah.
cattle. Yeah.
But what
Clarify.
I mean, we never saw an elk within at least a half mile of a cow, like a beef cattle cow. Um, I think, and when it was within a half mile, it was up over a very steep peak. Like it's not like they were within eyesight of the cattle. It was very clear that the elk and the cattle did not like each other for whatever reason. I don't know if it's competition of resources or just not. I don't know. They don't vibe or what. I don't know. But
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't seem like, yeah. If
if
you,
there were cows, you
I've
were in the wrong spot.
I've seen whitetails in the same fields grazing, not 100 yards from cows.
Yep.
Elk, no shot, not
No.
in our observation. That's
Nope.
the point to drive home. So you have that, and I don't know what the rules are. I don't know if we ever looked them up, but like it seemed like some of these, we were on like BLM land, and these cows, they're fenced in, or for whatever quality the fence is still up. I mean, a lot of them
Well,
are just
yeah.
beat over and whatever, but there's just cows roaming around, and like we'd be walking up an elk trail, and what we thought was an elk trail, and it's freaking cow pie. right
Yeah,
there, right? So like
we did
you
that.
see these cows using these, you'd see elk track there, but you'd see cow track and cow pies, and it's like, okay, well, how old was that elk track? That looks older than this cow track, and et cetera.
Yep.
So they probably pushed them out of there because we did not see them interacting anywhere near these cows. That's for
And
sure.
that's something we noticed even the first day is wherever there was fresh cow sign, there was old elk sign. And
Yeah,
wherever there was fresh elk sign, there was old cow sign. Like it was very clear that these animals were kind of trading the landscape back and forth. And of course, the beef cattle don't have a say in when that trade happens. It's more when the ranchers make that trade happen. But it was very clear that there was a time frame there where there was elk, and then the cattle move in, and there's no longer elk in that area.
yeah, absolutely.
And we
So
spent that
that's 3 points of pressure again. People, predators,
cows.
ranchers, and
Yeah. Yep. And we spent probably a good 2-3 hours watching that group of elk that was on private land, and they were working their way towards public until all of a sudden there was 2 or 3 bulls in the group and quite a few cows. And one of the bulls all of a sudden kind of got a little spooky, ran back into the private land timber, and the best Derek and I can gather is that he probably either smelled a hunter that was in the area, or maybe he even got shot at or got shot. Um, but he got out of there in a hurry, and we did not see those elk again. And because they never really crossed the line onto private or onto public, sorry, we ended up hiking back out to the truck then and kind of moved positions for that night. And we did a fair bit of driving around that day too. I think we even went back to town, got a little more supplies, and because you needed a tent yet,
yeah, I
so
did
we
not
went.
have a tent because our plan ended up being, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We got to try to get away from all these people,
Yep.
for one, and the only way we're gonna do that is if we both are camping and tenting out. Go back in and do that.
Yep.
Um,
So I had
I think,
originally brought my tent kind of just in case, but our main plan was to really truck camp, and we quickly realized that wasn't going to work.
yeah, I think what it really comes down to is the realization of the amount of time that you actually have to get done what you're trying to get done. Right. So, and what I mean by that is it does not make sense to hike in and out 2.5 miles carrying a pack. It's not that heavy, but whatever our stuff, just tripod, et cetera, call it 25 pounds ish or something. I don't know, maybe that ballpark, if that. It doesn't make sense to go couple miles in, try to scout, and then be walking, you know, out after last light, all that way, over elevation. Like you don't have time. Like if you
Yep.
got to be in there, and you have to be close to where you're trying to actually hunt once you locate the animals, because like you're never going to rest if you're trying to come in and out like long distance, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that was one of the things that we learned and discovered kind of, and figured that we would need to do, in order to be successful in any stretch, because we saw all these guys along the road and et cetera, but a lot of them were camping like out of their truck right there.
Yep.
So, okay, so if all these guys, how many miles are they really putting in? Maybe a mile, maybe a mile and a half. How, if they're walking downhill, how far do they really feel like they want to walk back uphill? So from the road, you can kind of make a range of where the people pressure might be, which
Yep.
is what we kind of did, either uphill or downhill, because we saw a lot of people camping from the road. And so it's like, okay, so we got to get out of that zone if we want to try, and we want to be in the zone where everything's being pushed to, where all the pressure mediation is going to. So that's where we came to the conclusion. All right, We got to go get Derek a tent, a pillow, et cetera, et cetera. So we can get back in there farther, 2-3 miles, past this pressure and a little bit deeper. And we ended up doing that? What, Sunday we went back into town, we said, and then I think that evening, that's when we went more towards part of the peak of Medicine Bow.
Yep.
We hiked up a recreational trail,
And
clearly
we hiked.
visible, yeah, clearly visible on Onyx, et cetera, et cetera. But it was heading back to an area that we thought we could get away from people and
Yep.
possibly see some more activity.
And we were right. We hiked back. We were probably about 2 miles back when we ran into our first animal, really. First big game animal, I should say. And that was a cow moose that we were walking through a fairly large kind of meadow opening. And we just happened to be walking and looked down to the left, and we're like, oh my goodness, there's a cow moose right there.
No bullshit. My first instinct was, well, because this is a trail that people can bring horses on.
Mm-hmm.
So my first instinct was, oh, somebody's just letting their horse out in the pasture here. I'm like, where are they camping at? And then we started glassing. I'm like, that was my first experience. I've never seen a moose in the wild until that point, but that was pretty cool. You just realize the just absolute sheer mass of that animal. And we weren't even that close at that point. We had some closer encounters later in the trip, but even from a distance, it was like, wow, that thing is absolutely massive. It's like a Clydesdale. It's like a Clydesdale of the woods, pretty much.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm amazed every time I see a moose on how large of an animal that they really are. And yeah, we spent a good, I don't know, 10 minutes or so watching that cow moose until we decided we were going to keep walking. And I think we walked another 250, maybe 300 yards. And all of a sudden, like
basically coming around
nothing in front of us. Yeah, we kind of just wrapped a corner ever so slightly, and we're like, oh my God, cow elk at like 200 yards. Get down.
Yeah, I'm like 15 yards behind you, I think, at this point. Like, I'm like just lackadaisical looking back, like, oh, is there a corner of one of these fields? There's going to be a gang of stuff. Like, so I'm just kind of walking behind you or whatever. And then I see you like duck down, start taking your pack off and stuff. And then I just like barely see through the like pine tree that was right on the corner, that cow. And I'm like, oh shit. And I bail to the right and then try to get and move up, like to kind of get near you. And man, slightly blurry from what happened just from there. But I know we like strategically were like trying to stay behind that pine tree right on the corner, get your bow out because you were in front, and then you were
your bow out,
reaching for your release, and then you're trying to pull an arrow out of your quiver and at least get it knocked, etc. And yeah, then I got my bow out too, just because you never know, and
we're at like
I think we just kind of left the packs there, like on the trail, and then just started going like light with the bows to get up right behind that pine tree, so we were deeper in the cover behind, like cutting us off visually from that cow. And then I don't know if you're throwing any of that little bit of footage. I might have to send it to you. But I took it with my phone because it was like so quick and we weren't expecting it. So the only thing I could do is pull my phone out and try to take a little bit of a video and peek around your shoulder. But I think you ranged her at like 190 yards, right?
Yep, it was about 190 yards. I do need to say real quick, make sure you send me those videos yet. I don't think you've added them to that shared folder that I created.
You created a shared folder?
Yeah, there's shared folder.
Oh, I can drop into that too?
Yeah, you can add whatever you need to that. So
that was my
whatever
holdup.
You need
my
to
holdup was that my holdup was I didn't realize anymore what you had given me and what I took. I just have all these photos, so
Yep.
Okay, if I go into the shared folder, I'll see like what you sent, then I can delineate.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can hit the plus button then, and it should allow you to add whatever you need to add. But anyway, yeah, we were about 190 yards from that elk, and there was the pine tree that we were hiding behind, which is on the right side of the trail. And that elk
We
slowly
have cow
moved.
calf tags, by the way. We
Yeah,
forgot
we
to
have cow calf tags. So yeah,
we
there's a bull bugling in the background, and we're just both like, man, kind of wish we could go after him, but you know.
we were well, at least like that was our first closer encounter, right? And that was like the
Yep.
first time we were hearing bugles, because that
Yep.
bull from Sunday morning, he wasn't bugling or anything that I recall. We just saw
No.
it.
No, and he was far enough away. If he was bugling, we probably wouldn't have heard him anyway.
Yeah. But anyhow, that's when we first like, okay, bugles happening. Like, all right, we're kind of into something here. I think we think
Yeah.
our theory is starting to play out. Our theory is get away from everybody else, right?
Yep. And we're about 2 miles from the truck at this point, and
With
Derek and I.
gaining some elevation too. So, but
Yeah.
that's something to consider when you're trying to get away from people. Is like you
Elevation.
can get away from the nastier the elevation, it seems to me, and
The
the
less
more
people
work.
there's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. The more work that needs to be put in, that starts making people fall out. So,
And
anyhow,
we you and I kind of had a miscommunication then, as far as when the cow gets behind this certain tree, we're going to move up. And I thought we were discussing a small tree that would just barely hide her. And that's when I moved. And when I moved, then there was also a calf with this cow. We should mention that. And I'm pretty sure the calf ended up busting us when we moved, because the cow was completely behind the tree. And then I pulled up the binoculars. I couldn't see the cow. And next thing I know, she's kind of running straight away from us. So I think what happened was we had lost sight of the calf, and the calf is actually what busted us. But
yeah,
I think the closest we
yeah, we
got to
got
an elk was like 170 yards or so. Like totally a dead elk with a rifle, but with a bow, we're like, we're about 100 yards too far away.
yeah, yeah. But it was funny because it was one of those moments where it was like you just stumbled upon something, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like we were trying to sneak on this trail or be quiet or anything like that.
Nope.
But yeah, no, you're 100% right. There was like a small pine tree, and then there was like a bigger one, and I mean that's obviously a learning point or coaching point for us, right? Like kind of be a little more detailed on our communication, because you saw the small tree, I saw the big tree. Like in my mind, I was like, wait till she gets to that tree, and that's what I said. And I was thinking that big tree
Yeah,
because
we didn't
we'll have plenty
specify
of time. We'll have
trees.
plenty of time to move at least to the next obstacle to block vision between us, and then we can go and peek around and analyze from there. And then maybe we'd even have a chance, because you're still behind that, to move up even farther and get kind of down more in like a lower point of the field, so we can kneel down and lose visual.
Yep.
But yeah, we were so focused on that cow too. Forget the trees. We totally forgot about the calf.
Yeah, we did.
So
We did.
it didn't. It might have not have mattered which tree in the first place, because we totally got focused on, oh, that's a good mature cow. Let's kill that cow. We forgot about the calf hanging out right over there. Which, if we bust that, that's going to bust mama, of course.
Yep.
And we totally forgot about that, which was
So
on
we
us.
kind of,
That was our first lesson on know your surroundings, because you're like in the mountains now. You got to take in every single variable to effect,
yeah,
all under that pressure of like trying to move on something and get close, right?
we went from like it's kind of like a relaxing, just let's walk around, no big deal, to like, oh my goodness, it's game time. And we got slapped like the Giants on opening day of 2023. I mean, we got slapped like the Giants. Those elk were the Cowboys, and we got slapped like the Giants. It was bad. It was ugly. But, we kind of swallowed our pride. We went about another 500 yards down the trail, set up camp for the night. Woke up the next morning then, pretty much right at daybreak.
Let's dive into why we decided to set up camp. We got moose feeling unpressured because as we were walking too, after that whole cow-calf incident, we looked back, there's another moose in the field and some moose.
That's true. Yeah. Yep.
So we've got unpressured moose, we've got a cow and a calf just leisurely walking across what we think is a recreational, trail. There's probably people walking up and down it all the time. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's not like it's a totally beaten down trail, but it's there. So maybe there really isn't that many people that go up there. We've got at least one elk bugling over here at, I don't know, however many 100 yards. And I'm sure we even heard another bugle or two. So we know that cow and that calf, they just walked out of their bed somewhere, with how casual they were. So if they feel that they can bed up here, then that's a telltale sign that okay, this place isn't getting just ran over by, what did we say, our predators, our people, and our cows at this point, the pressure, right? So we feel like we're kind of in the mix here and in the game, where they want to be. So then that's why we walk down the trail a little bit, and then find a spot, not the precise spot, obviously, that we think that cow and that calf would have been bedded on, but maybe a little bit more away from any other areas that might have been of interest to bed on. So kind of like an open hardwood area, not like a thicker area or anything like that, but still kind of near the trail so we could figure out the area again, kind of in the morning, and
have a quick, easy way of getting in and out.
Yeah, exactly. A good access to get back and forth to camp because, we're not experts at this yet. We're just going through it and trying to learn, and so make it easier on yourself for that steeper part of the learning curve. But yeah, so set up camp that night. Right, got a fire going. Thank God for toilet paper. Great fire starter.
Yeah, great fire starter.
The rolls are compressible. You can take a big roll of toilet paper and flatten that sucker out. Then
especially if you take the tube out the center.
Yeah, multiple uses on the toilet paper. Our biggest uses, obviously, wipe your ass and start a fire.
Yep, and a little bit of blood trail too.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get to that later.
Marking blood trail. But
so we found our nice
that was our first night, actually setting a campfire at camp. Building a fire, etc. I think looking back on it now, honestly, for me, that was one of my favorite parts. Just sitting there watching the fire because
absolutely.
You're out running around all day and trying to figure stuff out, but that's your moment of peace, is sitting by the fire, get some calories, get some water, just chill out, try to relax before you can go to bed. Because I mean, it's funny on those trips, at least on this trip for me, it didn't matter how much or how little sleep I got. I was ready to go in the morning.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I never felt myself hitting the snooze button and trying to go back to sleep whatsoever. I felt so energized by the whole moment. But the campfire is definitely a good cool down period. It's contradictory, right? Because you're thinking warm up by the fire, but that's your cool down, in my opinion, for hunting. Chill out, let the freaking stars come out. Man, how awesome was just being able to look up in the sky and you literally see the Milky Way, and then you understand why they call it the Milky Way, because it's not like you can pinpoint anything specific about it, but it's like a cloud, a ring cloud, that just goes around. And you look to either side of that, there isn't that, and there's just stars.
Stars in every direction. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, maybe we can interject one of our good pictures of it.
Oh yeah,
From
absolutely.
campfire.
I'll have
Right.
that video, that at least a picture up for the listener here, so you can kind of see what we were looking at there.
Yeah.
So that night, it got cold. It got real cold. I don't think either of us slept that good. We both put on pretty much every layer that we brought with us.
Yeah. No, let's break this down and how this went.
Let's break it down. Let's break it down.
All right. So here's how I know I went to bed. I started out, obviously it was warmer in the day, so I've got like lighter stuff on. And that's just kind of how I went to bed, wearing the same pants and the same shirt, like a thinner Sika shirt that I had that was like for warmer weather. And then maybe I think I might have put on like another like lighter layer and went to bed that way. Also went to bed barefoot. I remember just waking up maybe about an hour and a half later, like shivering. So at that point, just like scrambling through, like, where's my headlamp? Scrambling through the tent, trying to find layers, find a pair of socks. Where's the Under Armour that I brought? Like, I'll take these pants off, throw those layers on, etc. Like, it was just a continuous, maybe fall asleep for a little bit and wake back up like cold as hell. No sleeping bag. First of all, I had no sleeping bag, and neither did you at this point. We were basically literally just sleeping on blow up air pads. They're like, what, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches at most thick.
Yep.
Trying to sleep. And basically the moral of the story is we were just putting on layers as the night went on because we didn't realize how cold it gets up at 10,500 plus feet. When you have a wind chill too, like going on, kind of, I almost felt like, to me, no matter what, when we were up at that elevation, there was some kind of wind going on.
Yeah, there was. There absolutely was. And my sleeping
you got to, sorry, yeah, you got the colder temperatures because it's a higher elevation. Yep. And then yet you've got also the wind chill factor on top of that, which isn't something that I think we totally foresaw before this trip, especially not me. Like, I brought what I thought would be good for like 40-ish type of degree weather.
Same.
I didn't bring anything for below that, and
it got below that.
That wind cuts cold.
Yeah, it does. My sleeping situation was very similar to yours. I think I went to bed in like I think I wore my First Light Klamath with a wick shirt underneath and like a set of corrugate pants. And for the listeners that are familiar with First Light, you know what that is. For the listeners that aren't, I mean, it's pretty light. That's pretty light. Like that'll keep you comfortable around 55 degrees in the tree stand. And I woke up probably an hour and a half in, 2 hours tops, and I was freezing cold. I'm shivering, like I'm shaking. And I put on the Origin hoodie that I brought with me. And then I put on a Catalyst vest. And then I put on my rain jacket. I put on one of the rain jackets that I have because I was like, I need something to cut the wind. And that was about the only thing I had in my pack that was going to cut the wind. And then I brought rain pants in my backpack and I put those over my feet because all I had was a pair of socks on, and I didn't bring any long underwear or anything because I wasn't prepared for how cold it gets at 10,500 feet. And I'm with you. That was a long night of shivering and cold and just waking up every like 45 minutes to an hour. Thankfully, my feet never got so cold that it like was a frostbite danger or anything like that. But holy cow, was that cold. That was That was probably the coldest night of sleeping I've ever had in my life.
It was a wake-up call
It
that
was.
we didn't have proper gear
Exactly.
just to attack those types of situations. You know, we fought through the adversity per se, and then made stuff work. Like you said, putting the rain pants over your toes and stuff. I know I double, tripled up socks and stuff like that. Because again, it's not like at this point we're not like a half hour from Laramie. Like we're kind of up in there. So if we wanted to make a trip to Laramie to get sleeping bags or something like that,
It's at
it's like
least an hour to get. Actually, with hiking, it's
nah,
probably like 2 hours to get there.
correct. Don't forget the hike, the drive out, the drive back to Laramie, the drive back to the beginning of the mountain, the drive up the mountain, the hike back up. Like you're losing almost half a day or more to go get some of this equipment.
Oh, a trip
And
like that would easily take 6 hours out of our day.
yeah, like, and that's again circling back to the concept of time when you're out here. You only have so, I mean, we were blessed to have the whole week and some of the weekends to like do all this, but it certainly took towards the back end of all those days for us to even really figure all this out and like have a good heading on like how we should be attacking this, since it's completely DIY and we're just walking into public land trying to figure it out. Um, so yeah, circle back around here. We made stuff work. We found out layers that we had, like how we can, make it work, just to stay warm at night. 'Cause it's not like we're not letting the fire just go all night. We just kind of let it fizzle out,
Yep. And then go into our
by the
tents.
time we're in bed. Which I don't know. Maybe somebody has a technique for that they know better than us. I don't know what it is. But if they have it, drop it down in the comments. But yeah, that's the point when we realized, hey, it might be nice to have sleeping bags. We didn't go get any, but that
I
was
should note I had a sleeping bag in the truck, but it was like it's one of those $40 Coleman sleeping bags you buy at Walmart that weighs like 7 pounds, and it doesn't wrap up real nicely. It's not down or anything like that. It'll keep you warm, but it's great for like you're going to a campsite, you're walking a total of like 10 feet from your vehicle and you're throwing up a tent. Not great for hiking 2.5 miles back and setting up camp.
But if you could have done it again,
Oh, I would have taken it with. I absolutely would have
that
taken it
bit
with.
from the beginning.
Absolutely, without a second thought. If I had a do-over, that would have been strapped to my pack somehow, some way.
If somebody's on a budget, a sleeping bag is better than no sleeping bag.
Don't do what we did.
There's all these
Don't
products
think
out there, and you can go up and down the price range, whatever. You go to Walmart and buy a whatever $20 sleeping bag if you can find it. You'll be better off than having nothing, because you need to insulate yourself in cold regions and cold areas. You have to be insulated. If you're just kind of open, I mean, we've all been there. We're in the whitetail tree stand and the wind's blowing and you've got what you thought was going to be layers on and it's not totally, and you're just kind of sitting there trying to mentally tell yourself, like, keep sticking this out. It might happen any moment, right? Like, you don't want to be sleeping like that. If you can help it. You do not want to be sleeping like that if you can help it. So.
All right. So we've covered now our sleep system was absolutely garbage that first day. That first night, I should say. So I guess it's technically day 3 then. We woke up and decided to creep back out to that meadow that we saw that cow and calf in the night before. And we got there just in time to freak out first we freaked out a cow moose with its calf, which was actually pretty cool to see a cow moose and calf up close. And
yeah, that was
those who haven't seen a calf moose is like the size of a cow elk. Like, that thing is giant.
Yeah, I don't know how old it was, but it looked like that. It seemed to me like that calf moose was a little bit smaller than, and I don't know horses, but like just your average, kind of horse that somebody rides. It was a little bit smaller than that, would be the calf.
Yep.
And then obviously the mama was like bigger than a horse. But yeah, trying to put a comparison for people to visualize that. Yeah. And yeah, it was definitely those same ones. I have no idea where they've been,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
all we did was we were kind of going back down that recreational trail that we had originally came up, because that ran along the,
The
if I'm
edge of that like
not,
meadow.
yeah, which would have been like the northwestern side, I think, of all the meadows.
Yep.
So we were hugging the tree line. Like if we needed to dip into the tree line or find cover quickly or something, we were just kind of walking and glassing at that point to see, like, put two and two together what we saw um, the previous uh, day when we were glassing in the morning. Like, oh, maybe these elk like to hang out in the pasture type areas to graze in the morning. So we might be able to spot one and then go from there.
Yep.
Right. Because new area, we haven't seen it in the morning. We've seen it in the evening. That's when we had that encounter. So
And
just,
that was exactly our plan. And we did end up seeing one cow elk. We never saw a calf. We saw a cow elk. I'm fairly confident it was a different cow than the night before. And we kind of took the long way around trying to get to basically the back half of there was a bunch of fingers coming off this meadow, and it went up into one of the fingers, and we basically tried to circle around and sit there and see if any other elk followed it. And long story short, that was more or less a waste of time. Um, because nothing ever came through. And we had decided after that we were going to go for a little walk and basically just scout the property and really get an understanding of how elk use that higher elevation area. And I decided to hold the camera exclusively and just let Derek carry the bow. So Derek, since you were carrying the bow, you were kind of leading this whole thing. I kind of just stayed behind you the whole time, filming you, let you kind of go whichever trails felt right. I mean, why don't you walk us through that little bit of a that like scouting trip, kind of, I guess I want to call it, when we were hiking around on day 3, and
yeah,
kind of some of the areas we went through and why you chose some of the paths that you did.
yeah. So I guess to carry on from that point where you said we kind of ended up there in the morning where it became that period where it's like the sun is now kind of over the trees and the dew's almost lifted, if you will. It's almost it to me, it almost seems like these elk were like in the fields, and then if the dew kind of lifted, depending on the angle of this, like wherever the trees were and the slopes and stuff, like they liked that cooler air. And as soon as they felt that the warmer air was kind of coming because the sun was getting up over, that's when like the fields dispersed and went back in. At least if I had to put it to like a pinpoint, that's what it kind of seemed to me. So now at this point, we're like, now it's like daylight. Like there's not much shade area because the sun is like higher in the sky. So call it what, 8:30 ish or something like that. Maybe even 9.
I want to say it was almost 9 o'clock before we really started that walk.
Yeah. Okay. Let's, for a round number. Yeah. Um, so yeah, so Zach and I talked, and we're like, okay, let's scout and basically still hunt at the same time. And so, I mean, basically, as our first heading, and I forget if we heard that bull bugling in the morning. I think we might have, but definitely we started heading back towards, and a little bit of a roundabout way. We started heading back towards where we heard that heard that bull bugling the night before when we had that cow calf encounter.
Yeah, I'd agree with
just,
that.
just as this is like a kind of like a heading, like, okay, maybe there's something appealing over there that's like bedding area or whatever, good bedding browse, etc. Something that they like. And then we just started kind of walking and just trying to pick up sign as we go. How, what limbs are broken on trees? How beat is the trail that we're walking on? What is the freshness of the scat that we're seeing? Is this a fresh rub or is this an old rub? Just trying to take in every piece of information while walking slowly as we could. And I think basically what we did is we just kind of started going down elk trails and again trying to judge the sign. And then the theory at that point was the greater concentration of fresher sign that we see, like this is definitely the area to take note of at the moment. Because we saw like sign everywhere. I mean, there'd be trees rubbed up, there'd be crap and scat everywhere. There'd be tracks. So like we really had to like think about like how old is this, right? Like that was one of the big things is try to determine the timeline of the environment that we're in at the moment. So I don't know how many miles we put on there, Zach, but I want to say we put on a couple just trying to kind of go around and go down trails and this and that. And then at one point, well, I shouldn't say at one point, I should say the whole time that we're doing this as well, we're dropping milkweed just to understand what the wind is doing in this terrain. Because like we found out, Zach, like especially at the top of the mountain there, it just swirls and swirls and swirls. It could change direction. In
a second.
I like if you just stood there and for a minute span, like every 10 seconds, dropped milkweed, you'd see it starfish. Like it was.
Oh yeah, it'd go 4 or 5 different directions.
Yeah, but you could kind of nail down a predominant wind, but it would definitely swirl. So like what our next thought process was, like keep going down these trails, looking at signs, scouting, etc. But let's think about what would be an advantage or an advantageous like point, because we were in territory where there's different fingers kind of coming off the peak of this mountain. What would be an advantageous point for the predominant wind that we're experiencing? Sure. So let's try and basically flank something bedding towards that. Again, it's like using whitetail,
kind of
that upper third. I keep hearing that a lot with whitetail guys, right? Like where thermals and wind meet, that tunnel. So like try to flank something. So like getting down, almost us getting down maybe towards like the middle or bottom of that third and then walking around the point that way and still checking the wind the whole time. And I think, we went for a couple miles and we saw fresher sign and like what we thought was like, they're definitely using this area. But we haven't jumped anything at this point for sure. Not needless to say, who knows if we jumped something because the wind is swirling like crazy. And we don't know
how the wind was swirling. I'm convinced we jumped elk. I mean, there's no way with the amount of sign that was on that hillside that we didn't kick elk out, that we didn't know were there.
Yeah, I mean, we found beds, but it wasn't like we walked up on beds that you put your hand in it and you can tell it's still warm or anything like that. Like we found like what were definitely beds. I don't know if they're today beds and we jumped them, but
that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean it. And again, it'd be like some fresh scat, but I think as we learned, and at least this is one takeaway that I got, like, especially when one of these mornings we'll probably talk about when we saw that 6x6 and that cow, and then we followed them directly in um, to where they went to chase them. We saw like the freshest of the freshest scat, if you remember that moment. And you remember what that looked like? Like, yes, of course, it's that dark, like milk dud color, but it almost has a little bit of like a green slime to it. And to me, that is like, that's your first couple hours of fresh.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
um, if it still looks fresh and soft after that, but that like green little kind of slime to it is gone, like that's back half of the day fresh to me, dried out. Sun came over, dried it out, or whatever, right? So like I just wanted to throw that in there as a delineation. Like I think we were seeing a lot of like fresh stuff, but not fresh stuff when we were
Agreed.
walking from this point.
We were seeing stuff that was like a day-ish old,
Yeah,
if
not
I had
like
to guess.
something. Yeah, not like yeah, exactly. Like back half of the day, definitely 12 to 24 hours, if not 36 hours. Um, like still mushy, but doesn't have that. It's not like steaming and doesn't have that like green slime to it.
That
So
kind of stuff where like if you're whitetail hunting, like let's just correlate this to whitetails. If you were whitetail hunting, you'd be like, okay, they're here. They might not be here right at this moment, but I should spend some time here because they could come back.
yeah, 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 definitely. Um, so yeah, so a lot of walking, still hunting, kind of looking at Onyx. Where should we go next? What's the wind doing? Still swirling. Um, just moving around, trying to understand that upper part of that medicine bow there and like what's going on up there. I mean, it was anything from hard pine woods with like blow over trees to open kind of pasture with grass that's a little more grown up and some of it's kind of swampy. Then you got some ponds up there. Like some of them were even lakes, I would call them, because they were a little bit bigger. So it looked like what you had was food, water, some shelter, obviously some activity up there, not super fresh again, but yeah, what did we do? Ended up walking around and that took a good chunk of the day. And I think we went back to camp. And then I think if I remember correctly, our thought process was we'll go from camp out to some of these more open fields on the top where we've seen animal activity and just glass for that evening to
Yep.
see like where something may be coming out of and maybe try to make a move on it either that evening if we had time or just try to find another heading for the morning if I remember correctly, I think.
Yeah, no. Nope, that's 100% right. And so we kind of went back to camp towards the middle of the day. We actually got hailed on, which was pretty amazing. For what is this, September 4th? I believe this is Labor Day at this point, so September 4th.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could interject a small iPhone video of the hail
Yeah,
right there
absolutely.
and cut this part out
I
just
mean,
for
it wasn't just
theatrical.
lightly hailing, it was pounding hail.
I would say like getting close to buckshot size. Maybe not quite that. Maybe like uh you know what I mean? Maybe not no, not buckshot size. Cut that part out. Maybe like triple BB goose shot. Like getting big enough to where it's like if that shit gets any bigger and it comes down with force, it might rip holes in this tent. It was
Yeah.
just bouncing off, but you didn't want it to get any bigger, right? It certainly wasn't snow, and it wasn't like it was making a racket. That was interesting because that just rolled up on us. Like, yeah, it was cold and windy, but like, and rainy during the day, but that came in, and it's like you have no idea what it's going to do because
Yep.
you're up in an area that you've never been, and it seemed like it was getting stronger and stronger, and it bigger and bigger chunks coming down. But yeah, thankfully it moved off after like what 10 minutes or so. Like it didn't last long, but you don't know what's going to happen. So you're trying to think and prepare like, oh, if this gets like any crazier, I got to find like a tree to huddle under and all my stuff's just going to take a beating.
So because of that, we actually decided to kind of take drastic measures. We both acknowledged and realized we weren't prepared for that kind of weather. And that night, we actually got off the mountain, drove back to Laramie, which was again an hour and 45, 2 hour drive to get back to Laramie.
Yeah, because it was, well, let's set the stage. I think the temperature roundabouts as close as we could get to like getting the temperature for the peak of the mountain was already in 30s.
Yeah, it was
Low
38 when we got
30s,
back
and
to
then
the truck.
it was 30 to 40 mile an hour wind and wind gusts.
Yep.
And
Yeah. So
that's where it was like we couldn't get a fire going.
nope.
The wood was wet because it was raining during the day. Then it just hailed right there. Not that
I
that made
mean,
it wet, but the rain from earlier because it was warm enough that it was raining made everything super soaked. Yeah, it seemed like we went through half a roll of toilet paper just trying to dry the kindling out to just get something going, right? And then maybe feed some wetter wood on top and then dry it out and then let it burn. But man, we had a hell of a time trying to start a fire that night too. So
oh,
like that was something
absolutely.
to take into consideration. And then also we each had every single piece of clothing on that we had with us, and I think we called it like just after dark or just before, like after glassing and stuff. And we're like, we thought it would be smarter to bail out of there, go back into town, get a hotel room, get some better, like get better prepped for the next day so we can handle whatever situation. So I think we went to Walmart, this and that for half the day, and then we went back up in, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken.
Yep.
Um,
No, we did. We did. So we didn't get back to the woods until probably 2, maybe 3 p.m. Well,
the
I guess it
next
was
day,
Tuesday at this point. Um,
well, what was let's tell them what our thought process was though, right? It's like, okay, the
yep.
top of the mountain is frigid, blustery as hell, rainy, hailing. So like on one level, it's us and equipment and whatever, but then on another level, the thought is like maybe some of that kind of starts pushing them out of that area too, right? Because I think that was one of our thoughts. So then that at least that started to drive us, like when we were at the hotel and like taking a little more time to think and like strategize here, we were like, why don't we try the same type of strategy with going in deeper, but maybe down towards the bottom of the mountain where it'll be a little bit warmer, less windy, a little bit better weather, um, and where the private, almost kind of like the plains, the creek bottoms and all that butts up against BLM and that state land. Not necessarily to hunt a line, but just because, right, pressure and all that. And I mean, that was a thought that we had. So we're like, that's when we decided to make the move after we bailed out of the top of the mountain and went towards more of what we also discovered. I forget the app. You can shout it out. Where the like the wintering
Go
range.
hunt app.
Yeah, yeah. So the we also like we did more research and all that too. Like when we just stepped out of the woods for a second, like gathered our thoughts and like what gear do we not have? We were not prepared for that part of the trip. Like, um, what's a better strategy with what we do have? Where do we think we might have a better concentration of elk? It's also at this point, it's post Labor Day weekend. So I think we drove around a little bit too, remember? And we just went and re-looked at areas that had high pressure and went back through there and saw that a lot of people had moved out. Tuesday after
Yep.
Labor Day. So
Yep.
that was also part of the equation for making the decision to go towards the bottom of the mountain. So we had multiple playing the odds, right? Multiple positive factors. Less pressure was happening, a little bit better weather down towards the bottom of the mountain ranges, meaning the plains. And I mean, it would have been better for us and what we thought would be better for the elk. So that's what drove our decision to find a spot that is kind of a pain in the ass to get to, but we're willing to go in there with better understanding of what equipment we will need and like what the temperature would be. Like we're talking a 2,000-foot difference in elevation between where we started there and where we ended up setting up camp.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Also, we were on more of a southeast-ish or more east-facing slope, if you will. So the wind to me was not as bad as the top of the mountain.
No,
Like
it wasn't.
like it was coming.
We were probably
Seemed like it was coming from the west and like the southwest hard at the top of the mountain, if I remember correctly.
It was, and we were probably with this camp setup. We were probably, I don't know, 400-ish feet in elevation below the top of the mountain, which certainly helped. We weren't facing into the predominant wind, and we also had a lot of pines to our back to really, and in front of us really, to break up the wind. So this was kind of like an ideal camp spot that we really found this day.
Yeah, down at the camp at the bottom of the mountain, I'll call it, just to give a quick reference. But yeah, what that leads us into, that was Tuesday evening, right? I think, if I have it right.
Yeah, that'd be Tuesday evening. Yep.
Because Monday night was the hotel, regather our shit, get our shit together Tuesday morning, come up with a new game plan, go into the game plan Tuesday. So yeah, Tuesday night. And then yeah, find camp, set up camp. Tuesday night, we even had time Tuesday night to hop to
a nearby peak.
Yeah, hike to what was the most advantageous peak around to be able to analyze the grazing fields, if you will. I mean, that's all you can see is what comes out into the fields because all the forest is too thick for many of these grazing points. And you might be able to catch something moving across a clear cut on a slope, right? But other than that, you got the grazing fields to look at and you have these clear cuts. So yeah, we got up there, started glassing around. You and I split up because that was how we could cover more ground. I started seeing elk popping out on fields on public. I think you saw some in a far distance from your angle that were just off public on private, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And then yeah, when I saw some popping out on public, that's when I came and ran and got you, and then we took a look at them together then, and then I think we tried to devise a game plan from there. Was that the night that we got freaking ran up on by some pronghorn too?
That was the night we got. So we had
Yeah,
two
it was
doe
just after.
pronghorn.
Yeah, sorry. It was
We're
just,
glassing.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I don't mean to interject. I just want to keep setting this. So we're looking. If we're on this peak, we're looking to the north.
Yep.
Okay, so we're looking to the north at these fields because the mountain range kind of runs north, slightly northwest, but we're looking to the north because that's what's down over in the fields and stuff that we can see.
Yep.
So I think we get to a point where it's like, okay, we've located elk in the fields. We can kind of see by the way they're moving and working, like where they may have come out of. So those are possible daytime bedding areas, etc. So we can kind of check those same fields or relative fields in those areas in the morning to try to make a move. At least that's what my thought process was about how we went about it. Like we just tried to see where they came out of, and it's like, okay, maybe that's their little house on the corner, and maybe that's where they kind of like to go back in, and maybe they'll be chilling in the fields in the morning, and we can make a move, right?
Yep.
So we kind of sit there and devise that from what we can see at the vantage point, and then we turn around. We start walking back up a little more towards the peak because we kind of had to dip down
A little
slightly,
over the peak. Yeah.
a little over the peak to get some more view of what we wanted to see. And we get back up to the peak, and to the south, completely opposite of where we were looking, just coming right up the hill, man. I mean, you saw him first. You want to? You want to say what happened? You saw him first, and you're like, "Oh, stop! There's pronghorn."
So we knew where the elk were, and Derek had mentioned on our way out to the trip that he'd never seen a mule deer before. So honestly, I was glassing.
I haven't seen a mule deer in reality.
Yeah. So I was pretty much glassing to try and find a mule deer and be like, Derek, there's a mule deer, 10 o'clock, 400 yards away, right by this certain piece of sagebrush, whatever. Look at it. There's a mule deer down there. And I happened to be glassing down below us, and I just turned enough to the right, and I was like, oh, there's some pronghorn about 200 yards out. That's a little surprising because we're standing at about 9,500 feet at this point. And they just keep working towards us and working towards us and working towards us and working towards us. And they keep coming until they get to about, and it's a shame the videos don't show how close they really got, but they got to about 20, 25 yards of us. And it was it was a doe and a fawn pronghorn. And they're watching us and they're kind of looking at us. They don't really trust us that much. And I don't know if one of us moved or what, but they ended up running to about, 40 yards or so, and then turned around and started coming back again. And they decided then that, like, okay, this is not something we need to worry about. And then they just turned around and started looking out over the massive valley that was below us. And it was a really majestic, kind of just awesome view to have. And Derek and I mean, we've been standing there now for probably 10, 15 minutes watching these pronghorn. And we're like, we kind of got to move.
Yeah. It's not like they ran up on us. They kind of took their time and just casually walked up towards us.
Yeah, this whole process took quite a bit of time.
But like got to the point where they were close enough. We were standing still and like, we're standing still for like 10, 15 minutes at this point. Like seeing it because we're like, how close can they get? But like they got close enough to where at that point you're like, I wonder if they can see me blink.
Yeah, like don't look them in the eyes.
Yeah, you try not to, and then, but you still got to blink. And I still think the wind swirls out there like crazy. So I think they slightly got a wind, or they saw one of us blink, because I know for a fact I didn't move a muscle. And I was awkwardly holding my binoculars in front of my face like this. So like literally my eyes were just
right over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm holding my phone up so that like I can like I got my hat here and I can just look over my phone to the pronghorn themselves, and I'm holding my phone there and recording with my phone, and I'm like, this is insane. But they come to 20, 25 yards of us, spook a little bit, run to like 45, look out over the valley, or just kind of watching. And Derek and I are like, should we spook them? Because we we kind of got to start heading back to camp.
We got to move. Yeah, like
Yeah, and I just
this
did
is
a
nonsense anymore. Like,
I did a quick little like sidestep, almost like a juke move, like you'd see in football or something, and they booked it to 60 yards straight away from us, and then just stood there and watched us again for another 45 seconds to a minute, and then we finally just had enough. We started walking, and they took off. But that was probably one of the coolest experiences of this whole trip.
yeah, curious animals they are.
Absolutely. So we go back to camp. We have a fire again. We kind of shiver through that night again because I wasn't smart enough to bring my sleeping bag yet.
Yeah, we didn't.
And then
We thought it was going to be warmer at the bottom of the mountain, which it definitely was.
it
But
was, but not warm enough.
we weren't like when we went to
Not comfortable.
Walmart and
We weren't
figured
comfortable.
out. Yeah, we didn't. I don't know. We just hadn't realized yet that like a sleeping bag was like the ticket. A sleeping bag didn't matter what it was. A sleeping bag would be the ticket. But
Yeah.
whatever. That's us just being dumb.
So we wake up the next morning and we decide we're gonna go look over another meadow, field, whatever you want to call it, that's in the area.
Well,
And
no, it would have been so we went up top of another like peak that we thought was a peak that was looking down towards the
that's
field
true. Yeah,
where we
that's true.
saw the elk the night before. So like just try to take that intel as a waypoint and then get closer to that in the morning, see if they're out in the same type of fields, like, or at least moving and trying to head through those fields to go back to the what we thought was their proposed like bedding spots or whatever. And now that's the morning we saw in the distance, what, 3/4 of a mile or so, maybe, two elk in the field and that guy trying to go up the hill. A guy was
Yeah.
putting a stalk on. A guy was putting a stalk on, and we were watching it from a distance.
Yep.
Um,
And unfortunately, one of the elk saw him and they both blew out of there before he was able to get a shot. And then I looked back about 2 minutes after that and he was still sitting there with like his head in his hands, just totally upset with himself that he blew that stock, that or blew that opportunity, I should say. But anyway, back to our hunt then.
but that again, it's all these little things. You gotta stack them up over time. Again, we see elk in the field in shooting light, right? Like that's at a distance, but it's another key factor to keep adding to the equation to try and figure all this out. So we see that happen, but at the same time, we're trying to peek down into the fields that we can see that we saw those elk in last night. And if I remember correctly, we didn't see anything in those fields.
No, we didn't. We saw a group of 6 cows, probably a mile away, and they were all on private land, and there was no elk on the public land at that point.
Yeah, that's another good point is as we're at these like higher spots where we can glass further and even on the private, again, we're seeing elk out in the fields for like the first hour of shooting light, just kind of grazing until the sun really comes up to that point where the dew rises. In my opinion, like it's like literally as soon as the dew rises, it's like everything's gone.
Yeah, it's
But
like as
like
soon as they
nobody,
start getting a little bit warm, they're like, "I'm going back into the timber."
yeah, exactly. Dew rise, sun come in, or just they notice that temperature change start to happen. Whatever it is, it's like right around that first hour of light, we're realizing like if you're going to get an opportunity, like an open opportunity, not in the hardwoods, it's going to be in that first hour because they could be in the fields. It just depends if they're there or not. So I think from there, what we did didn't see anything in the fields that we thought they might be, and we didn't locate anything where we saw stuff the night prior or the evening prior. So then we basically went back to still hunting and scouting down kind of in those areas where we saw the elk, what we thought pop out of the evening before. It's like, okay, is this a bedding area, a consistent bedding area, right? Walking around, walking through. And I think, well, again, same process, trails, because you can't. It's crazy walking through that woods because there's so many trees blown over or clear cut or this and that. It's like there's only so many there's only so many areas that like even like a bull elk with his freaking horns way out to here can really walk through. At least
Yep.
like, or there's evidence that like it's a consistent travel corridor. So that's like what you have to walk down, right? And so like we're just trying to still kind of follow these and do the same process we were doing up on the top of the mountain the days prior towards the bottom, just to scout it out, feel it out. Like, where do they really want to be? Where's trails? Where's wallows? Where's rubs? Where's all this? And we're just chasing them around. And then I think at this point too, like we realize we're more so in the area where there's like definitely more bulls because we hear bugles. And also it's the middle of the week. So, and we're the only truck at the end of this road that walked down this road to camp in. So we think we're by ourselves at this point, at least to our knowledge. Like, so it's not hunters bugling. Like, these are actual bulls bugling in these woods, and we're hearing that, and we're trying to decipher, like, because again, we have cow calf tags, so we're not interested in chasing the bulls at this point. Like, we're like, how can we get a shot on a cow? Like a mature cow is what we wanted. And if memory serves me right, again, I think it was kind of around this point towards the middle of the week here, like Wednesday, where we were like, even like in the evenings glassing, like every time we thought we saw a cow, there was definitely at least like 2 or 3 bulls in the same field or same area, right? Like, and it
Yep.
seemed like these cows were following these bulls, like totally kind of contradictory to whitetail knowledge, right? Like, it seems like the buck is pushing the doe and heat around, and it's not like they hang out and have a family unit. It almost seemed to me like these elk are a little more like family unit, at least what we saw, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They weren't really like haremed up like it was the full rut yet.
Yeah, yeah, not exactly. Um, kind of lost my place there for a second, but I think somewhere around here on Wednesday is when we were like, man, I think the only way that we're going to try and get on a mature cow is to chase bugles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
So
get,
that was,
like follow the stragglers,
yep.
you know?
I'd agree. I'd agree. That was probably like mid. I think we came to that realization when we split up Wednesday. You decided to sit one meadow. I decided to sit another, both of which we had seen cow elk in the night before. And we
Yeah.
thought it was a good idea. And then that night, just texting each other back and forth, we're like, because surprisingly, we had service.
Yeah,
We're
down
like,
in the holler. So we're at, yeah. Sorry,
no, go ahead,
stuff
go ahead.
just comes back clearly to me after like you start talking. I'm sorry, but I'm sitting at my bottom finger down here in a meadow on the side of like, so like we got kind of two mountains coming together like this, or two fingers, right? So Zach and I are sitting on this one finger, Meadows on these fingers. I'm below him. Down in the holler down here, get my finger in it. So we're sitting over here. So down in the holler down here, this elk is bugling his head off. Is he not, Zach? It's like every 5 minutes he's just
he's going
but
crazy.
you can pinpoint because he's moving and bugling and moving and bugling, right? He's moving. And it's just like, what is is he on crack? Like, what is going on with this guy? And he starts working kind of up the draw, up the holler, more towards you. Like, he definitely is past me laterally at this point and like up towards you more so. But he's not like, obviously not in shooting range, or what he might have been, 100, 150, 200 yards. Some radius around you is like his path, like working. And there's another field that's public up above you. And looking back now, like, just hearing him and where he was, and like, you could put a onyx point to all of it. Like, he just walked up a trail, like kind of up the other side of the mountain over here, and we're sitting over here, and he just walked up and kind of roundabouted both of us, like went went towards this upper field public. And I think there was maybe 45-ish, maybe 35-ish minutes of shooting light left. And like, it was so obvious, even down where I was. I remember you and I texting back and forth, and I'm like, I remember saying, I'm like, are you gonna make a move? Because I thought, yeah, I think
you were texting me. You're like, dude, are you gonna go up there or what?
Yeah, because we were texting back and forth. Because I think I was like, can you see him? Because from how loud he was, like up there, it sounded like he was like about to walk into the field that you were sitting at. That's how the perception of me was, because the way like the acoustics were coming down to me. And then I think he went a little further at that point. I was like, can you see him? And I was like, yeah. You were like, no, because the woods is too thick. I can't glass through the woods and see him. You said you can only see like 65 or 70 yards or something like that. And then he kept going higher. And of course, we knew he was going higher because we could hear it. Like, he literally left a pinpoint every like 30 feet up the hill he went. It was crazy. He was just going off. And then that's when I was texting you. I was like, man, are you gonna make a move? Like, it sounds like he's going right above you to that field that we both knew about because we had seen it from glassing, because it was right below where we were glassing the night before. And it was like obvious, and we were like, oh yeah, that's a public field, right? So we knew that from the night before. So we could communicate that way and be like, he's heading up to that field. Like, that's where he's heading. And then at some point there, you were like, you texted me and you're like, I'm making the move.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, and then we said the famous quote of the week. At least I remember texting you the quote of the week.
Go ahead. You can say it.
Live fast, eat ass.
That's exactly what I texted you. I'm like, all right, I'm going. Live fast, eat ass. Let's go.
Yeah. And, gotta be aggressive. Yeah,
you gotta be aggressive, man. The elk will probably.
And then it turned into what? You tell everybody from there.
So the elk were probably 200 feet in elevation above me. I decided, you know what? He's bugling up there. I could hear cows with him, cows mewing up there. I decided I was going to book up there and just try to get up there, do a couple cow mews. I had the Phelps Easy Sucker game call. And I get up there. It took me all of like 10 minutes because I'm hyped up on adrenaline. I'm like, let's go. I'm basically running up through the woods. And I hit the meadow and I slow down and I start I start just moving real slow, and I can hear him bugling up ahead of me. And he slowly moves off to the left side into the trees. So I wrap around the meadow a little bit and get to this little point that's out there. And the meadow's probably, I don't know, 150 yards wide or so. And I just do 3 quick cow calls. And those 3 quick cow calls, he instantly, bam, bugles back at me. And then I hear sticks snapping all over the place. And next thing I know, I've got a massive 6x6 bull at like 70 yards, which is well within my killing distance. And I'm like losing my mind. And there's a cow at 100 and I think it was 108 yards, which is more than I'm really comfortable shooting with the bow. I kind of cut my limit off at about 90. I've shot 108 at like Total Archery Challenge, just messing around in the backyard, but it's not something I want to take an animal at. But anyway, that cow hangs out at 108 yards, and there's a spike bull too. Meanwhile, this 6x6 is, like I said, 70 yards away, just bugling his head off, basically like screaming in my face, like, where is this cow that I heard? She needs to be a part of my harem. And I'm standing up now. I'm ranging the spike bull. The spike bull's at 92. The cow's at 108. The cow goes back into the woods. She's like, I don't care what's going on out here. It doesn't involve me. The spike bull's like somewhat interested. And I could have shot him at 92. Like I said, I'm confident out to 90. 92 isn't that much, really. I mean, it's a 2-yard difference. I know my tape's on. I've practiced out to that distance. I feel good at that distance. And but I didn't have a bull tag, so he got the pass. And the 6x6 works off, and I'm standing there like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that just happened. And the spike bull, I can still see the spike bull. He just turns and looks, and he's looking a little ways away from me. And I look up where he's looking, and there's a 4x5 standing up there. Just another bull at like 150 yards, just standing there looking at both of us. Cause I'm to that bull, I'm in the wide open. To the spike, I'm up against the trees, but to the 4x5 that's up there, I'm like 2 yards out from the tree line. I'm fully exposed. I'm just a figure standing there. But it never spooked him, and he just slowly walked across the meadow. I tried a couple more cow calls, and unfortunately I couldn't call the bull with the cows back. But man, that was probably the most exhilarating, one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever had in the woods, ever. I mean, that was just beyond exciting. I'm pretty sure my heart could have leapt through my chest at just about any minute. All right, guys, I'm going to end the podcast right here. This is a good spot to end it with a really exciting night, seeing a whole bunch of elk, having some bugling bulls real close, a bunch of cows around. Derek and I are getting into the elk, and next week's podcast is going to be really exciting, talking about the conclusion of our hunt, the back half of our hunt, I should say. So we look forward to talking to you guys next week here on The Move with Move Outdoors, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching if you're on YouTube, or listening if you're on any podcast platforms. And hey, if you're looking at us on YouTube right now, don't forget to check us out at themoveoutdoors.com for all your merchandise needs. Get this cool hat like the one I'm wearing, except of course yours would come without all the sweat stains. But anyway, we appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you next week. Till then, you're on the move with Move Outdoors.